Welcome back, Honors. Welcome back to the Faculty Lounge, where Gianna ran down here and got my coffee the other day. Welcome back to this area because my room is currently being used. Open house prep, all that fun stuff. Blah, 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 because my room just shouts intellectual fortitude. Now, anyway, so the big thing is that I'm actually recording this ahead of time, trying to kind of guess where we're going to be. We might actually have cut a little bit further. We might have gone a little bit back or whatever, but I also just want to get this flip up as fast as possible so you can watch it during S period. Start studying, get ready for your test on Thursday, right? So if you have any study guide questions, please come to me and ask. It's not a problem at all, and we will attack that stuff together, and we will get this all figured out. But where we left off talking about is there is no amount of good emperors or bad emperors that can save Rome. Why would bad emperors save Rome? That's kind of dumb. It actually kind of contributes to this whole thing right here. So following it around like the late 130s, right? So like give or take where Marcus Aurelius's reign finally ended, which ended exactly, let's double check that when he died, it ended in 180. From 180 to about this one very magical year called 476, you're going to see Rome start to crumble, right? So, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that more than anything else, it's just getting way too large, right? Like Rome is absolutely massive. This is at its peak in 117, so this is actually under the reign of Trajan, right? So like before Marcus Aurelius ever even ruled. So that is under him. His column was built to signify these things. Hadrian's going to build his wall right there, right? Pius and Nerva are just going to not screw this whole thing up. So like looking at this entire growth and expanse of Rome, they've just gotten way, way too big. And what's going to end up happening is that there's a lot of trouble in this empire, right? This empire is just way too large. You cannot expect for them to be able to like run this thing efficiently, right? So rulers in Rome are going to be unable to govern very effectively, right? A lot of different reasons kind of amount to that. But one, like the Roman Republic is only meant to rule a small area, not a massive empire, right? You got another one that's like, for example, the emperor is now ruling over a huge territory and these governors, and you got technological issues and infrastructure issues that you can't kind of like finagle to be able to get a little bit closer to each other. Also, you've got people like Caligula and Nero rising to power. You call those people tyrants, right? Tyrants are what you refer to as really aggressive, over-the-top, zealot-like leaders, right? Guys who are not having the best interests of Rome in mind, they have the best interests of themselves in mind, right? And so they're ruling very, very aggressively. And some of you are like, well, wait a minute, Mr. Terry, what about those 5 good emperors? I thought that those guys were good. They were, but you have to understand that there were 80 emperors of Rome, right? 80 different emperors. There was one year where there was 4 of them. So, but like in most of the emperors, if they didn't get stabbed to death by somebody, were actually not that good, right? So you got tons of them, like Caracalla, Elagabalus, Commodus, Maximus Thrax, Domitian, Diocletian. Like I could go on for days about the bad emperors of Rome, but you only got 5 good ones in a row, right? So those guys aren't going to be able to rule effectively or govern effectively. So looking at this entire thing, well, I plug this computer up so it doesn't die. There we go. Citizens are losing a lot of respect for their government, right? And so what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of military actions and a lot of different movements going on that are leading to dysfunction in the empire, right? And so then we entered into this period known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Edward Gibbon, who is a very fantastic historian who wrote a series of 6 books, right, each about 500 pages called The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, really, really hangs a lot on this, right? The crisis of the 3rd century. The crisis of the 3rd century shows us that revolts are running rampant. People are losing respect for their government. Tyrannical emperors are coming into power. A lot of these generals believe that they can rule over a smaller area of the empire better than any emperor actually could, right? And so you got 2 rogue states that are going to break away, right? So in this long run, what ends up happening is you had the Roman Empire like kind of about this size, right? So we'll back up a little bit just so I can show you on a map. So you had the Roman Empire about this big. So 2 rogue states broke away. One here in Britannia and Gaul, right, broke away, and then one over here in the east broke away. And they were like, we are no longer a part of the Roman Empire. We are ruled over by our generals, and we are not associated with you anymore. We're the kingdom of blit blit. So what ends up coming down, though, is enter Diocletian. Diocletian is going to be the emperor that takes those 2 states back into the Roman Empire, right? So what you're going to end up having is a lot of emperors are going to show up, and they're either going to do like a really good job or a really bad job at just preventing Rome from falling. But they're all Band-Aid fixes, right? So Diocletian comes in, and is he a scumbag or is he a savior? I don't really know, because you have to understand, like, he's going to do one really good thing, which is keeps the Roman Empire from falling, but he also does one really terrible thing, or actually several thousand terrible things. So Diocletian is going to send legions out to retake those rogue states, right, and suck them back into the empire to recreate the Roman Empire. But he's the first one that realizes it's too large. It needs to be split into administrative zones where guys rule over each one of them and kind of work like a four-way dictatorship, right? You can have an emperor that's still kind of the chief emperor of the entire thing, but everyone needs to report to each other, right? So what ends up occurring is Diocletian actually split the empire into 4 separate parts, right? 4 separate parts, making the empire easier to manage. This saved the empire from falling, but again, it's just a band-aid fix, right? Because he then retired from being emperor. What's funny enough is when after he split these things, he retired being emperor and then went back to farming, and he never even was a farmer, but he just went back to farming. And who is he trying to emulate in Roman tradition? Good job, Sabito. That is a fantastic answer. That's right, Cincinnatus, right? He's trying to be like Cincinnatus, so that's why he retired and went back to farming. But he also had 3.5 thousand Christians executed, right? So we talked about that a little bit in class today. His preferred method was actually like having Christians tied to posts and having lions attack them or other wild animals actually go out and attack them, or having them sacrificed in like a manner of other different ways, because this is during the time period, during the 3rd century, when Christianity is still illegal, right? So looking at this map, though, this is what he did. He split it all into these different areas. And then he actually, literally, not even kidding, called each of them a Caesar, an Augustus, a Caesar, and an Augustus, right? And the guy that rules this section is going to become very, very important. Because do you think that 4 guys can share rulership of Rome evenly without actually like going to war? Of course not, right? So, because civil wars are going to break out. And no, that's Keanu Reeves. I mean this Constantine, right? So, Constantine is going to be the emperor that comes to power and kind of cleans up the mess that Diocletian left, right? Like, yes, Diocletian kept the Roman Empire from falling, and this idea of splitting it into 4 parts, dividing it into 4 parts, Diocletian divides it into 4 parts. You could say that he did a lot, but he didn't do anything to prevent those 4 guys from going to war with each other. So what Constantine's going to do is he's going to build up a Roman army, and he's going to slowly start conquering bit by bit of the Roman Empire on his own to appoint himself the new emperor, right? Now, the thing about it, though, is when he does this successfully, he almost actually lost. He was in one of his final stages of the campaign and almost actually lost out towards Turkey. Constantine retakes the entire empire, and he comes up with an idea. 4 parts is too many parts is too many, parts in general is too much. It should not be split. It should be a unified thing, and we should have 2 capital cities, right? Have 2 capital cities and have only dual rulership like consuls when we absolutely need them, right? So he actually went to this old city called Byzantium, took it over, and then had it renamed Nova Roma, right? So he took the city of Byzantium, named it Nova Roma, and later on, it's going to be named Constantinople after his death because of something amazing that he did. He's going to be the one that legalizes Christianity. It is believed that he received a vision from God during one of his dreams on his campaign where he thought that his army was going to lose the next battle. And apparently, in the heat of battle, he looked up into the sky in his dream and saw the stars were aligned in the symbol of a Christian symbol. I think it's either a cross or like the P with the X. And so he ends up looking up there, and then he has all of his men carve it into their shields the day before battle. They go out and they win. He then legalizes Christianity, right? Now, that is going to be a big thing. He didn't actually go back to Rome and say, I'm a Christian and everybody else has to be. He kind of like integrated Christ into the Roman pantheon. Like actually on the Arch of Constantine, there's an image of Christ next to Christ next to Zeus. So it's like, oh, there's Zeus and or Jupiter and Mars and Venus and Neptune and Jesus. Like so, he actually reintegrates Christ into the entire Roman pantheon and slowly legalizes Christianity throughout the empire. And he is a really, really big reason why you can actually consider the spread of Christianity during the Middle Ages being so big, right? But he also established a co-rule system based only on need. So whenever they needed a dictator or 2 dictators or emperors, they would go out and grab one, right? Sometimes there was 2 rulers, sometimes there was 1. It was just kind of dependent on the situation. And this is probably the best idea he could have came up with. So there was Rome, and here is Constantinople after his death. Now look, so here's Rome, and the second capital was originally Byzantium was its name, Byzantium, and then he named it to Nova Roma, and then after he died, they called it Constantinople, and today it's called Istanbul, right? So now it's actually a city that's gone through 4 different names. Now, in this whole process, though, as well, you're seeing a time of invasion. So Constantine fixes everybody up. Constantine legalizes Christianity. Diocletian divides it into 4 parts, keeps it from falling apart, and then kind of lets it limp along for a little bit longer. But then you're going to see a time period where barbarians are going to begin to invade / migrate, right? This is a little bit of a weird situation because you got to understand that some of these guys were invading. Like, there's no way you can get past it, okay? So some of your, like, very warrior-like barbarians who had cultural diffusion happen to them, and they had learned to fight much like the Roman military had over a time period, they are going to actually attack the outskirts of the Roman Empire. One of the biggest ones or groups of them was the Huns, right? The Huns were led by this guy right here named Attila, and I'm sure that you've talked about Attila in your religion class, right? Apparently one of the biggest moments in the early church actually relates to Attila the Hun. When he threatened Rome from the outside, he threatened Rome and Nova Roma, and he said, I will invade both of these cities if you do not come out here and pay me off to save them. And then apparently, like, Leo the First, like, went out there, and then 2 angels came and helped him battle him back, and then Attila ran away. There's also historians that say he might have paid him. Like, there's a lot of stuff that ended up happening in that, like, whole situation. But Leo the First is basically responsible for saving the fledgling Christian religion as one of the earliest popes from this guy, Attila the Hun, because he was the one invading the empire from the outside. Thank you, Miss Denny. Thank you, Mr. Mathern. Appreciate y'all helping my honors kids out like that, right? So the other big thing, though, that does end up happening to Attila is he actually leaves after him and Leo have some kind of conversation, and he ends up leaving. So, like, he leaves, though, and he ends up dying the next night on his wedding night, which is crazy. Like, so on his wedding night, he actually ended up drowning in his own blood. Probably had, like, a blood clot or an ulcer in his liver explode. Now, the big thing, though, also, the Huns were not the only ones invading. You also had the Visigoths who were invading. The Visigoths actually invaded from the north and then invaded Rome and then went down to the south towards Spain, right? You got the Vandals who showed up, which is a tribe of people who attacked Rome in 406 AD. They took items, destroyed monuments, and when they were there, they literally killed so many people. They sacked most of the outskirts of the city, and they would ask you, why are you destroying our statues? Why are you destroying these things? You have no need to do this. And they were like, because we want to, and we want to embarrass you, right? And so that's where we get the word vandalism from, right? You also have a lot of other groups. Jot these other groups down. Put the migrators on there, right? The migrators are the Germanics are going to be migrating in. You're going to have different types of Gauls migrating around, and they're moving throughout the empire, trying to create their own little states inside the empire, because it's just too big. You can't keep track of all these barbarian groups who are just moving throughout the empire at any given moment, right? It's just too large. It doesn't make any sense. There's no way you can govern all of them, right? And because of this movement and these migrations and these invasions, the economy is going to begin to suffer. Trade is going to start declining. Their money loses value. The price of food is going up. Inflation is skyrocketing as of about 400 AD, right? So, like, inflation is a big crisis where money is devalued, right? So let's say hypothetically you had a coin that was about this size, right? So you have a coin that big, and it's worth a certain amount of money, right? It's got Theodosius on top of it because he's an idiot, and he's actually not a very, very good emperor at all, but it's about this big, right? So over time, the Romans started making their coins smaller and smaller and smaller, but expecting them to go just as far and be worth just as much, and that's not how it works, right? Because if you're making smaller coins, it means you can make more coins, so that means that there's actually more money circulating around, which makes your money worth less, right? So, like, their money is becoming worthless, okay? Price of food's going up. No trade is going on. And then the Roman Empire is going to split into 2 parts, right? As of about, give or take, 450 AD, Theodosius, one of the last Roman emperors, comes on, and he actually splits the empire into 2 different pieces. What an idiot, right? So, like, he divided the leadership of the empire. He would lead the eastern side. He got the good side, and then his buddy got the western side, right? This was a terrible idea. Reason being is you now have 2 independent states, one against the other. You have Western Rome and Eastern Rome, who are not considered to be caring about the needs of each other, right? If something happens to Western Rome and it's burning up, Eastern Rome doesn't care. Eastern Rome's going to move on, right? So, like, Eastern Rome is going to govern itself like an autonomous state. And so the split left them open to attack. You basically just cut their army in half. You cut all the resources in half. You cut all their stuff in half. Theodosius, great job. The split left Rome open to attack. The barbarians are going to continue to migrate and invade and move throughout the empire. And then in 476 AD, a group of the people called Ostrogoths, under the leadership of this guy named Ottokar, show up in 476, and they say, the city is now ours, all right? So, like, and they destroyed Rome and basically founded a new version of Rome that is actually their vision in 476. By 500 AD, the Roman Empire had broken into several different kingdoms, right? The Western Roman Empire, right? The eastern half, though, held on. until 1453 AD. They lasted for another 1,000 years, right? Keeping all the intelligence and all the things from ancient Rome and ancient Greece safe and actually in libraries and things like that over there. Well, we refer to the eastern half of Rome, jot this down, as the Byzantine, okay? So put the Byzantine underneath the eastern half. And that's it. That's y'all's flip going into your test. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. Y'all have a great one.